started because I try to be a timely person. Lewis Carroll, who is the Reverend Charles Dodgson, was definitely a timely person. He'd be upset with me right now because I didn't start on time. I just want to show you, this is my first Alice in Wonderland book. I've probably read it 20 times. I got it when I was a kid, and I have this, right? I have the annotations, so those of you who are not annotating, Darren. You can see, and my daughter says, Mom, you wrote in that one, get me a new one. So I bought new ones and I wrote in those too. So I finally bought her one that she's hid from me so that I won't write in it. How many of you have read Alice in Wonderland? Okay, that's actually more than I usually get. I ask all of my classes this, and I asked, a couple of people responded to me in a way that made me think, what is going on? Because they would say, no, I'm not really into the drug scene. Something like that, and I just thought, what's going on? And that's when I realized that their only experience with Alice in Wonderland is the hippie culture. For some reason, the hippies really liked Alice in Wonderland. Probably Jefferson Airplane is the reason, right? Go ask Alice when she's 10 feet tall. Right. Okay. So actually, they did a good job of using references from the book in a proper way. However, they did tie it inextricably to the hippie culture. A lot of your experience with Alice in Wonderland is through Disney. And even if you did read the book, when you think of Alice, you probably see in your mind, yes, I'm very clumsy. That's just laugh or whatever. I'm just going to keep going because I'm used to it. So you probably see this, right? Disney felt like he could do whatever he wanted to with the story, that he did not, and he said it outright. I don't have to stick to an original author story. It's mine now. I get to do with it what I want. Now, he didn't change it that much, but he did change it. So, if you watch the movie, it's not the same. Some of you saw the Burton version. What do you think of that? A little creepy? Yeah, if this is, and you know, my daughter said, Mom, when we watch this, I don't want to hear you complain. Don't tell me everything you got wrong. But this is creepy. This is a little creepy and dark, and Burton usually is. And I don't think Carroll would have approved of his version. He may have been okay with Disney because he was happy with the children. How many of you watched the TV show Once Upon a Time? This is Alice, and she's coming to kick your ass. So we have a different take on Alice. In fact, Alice as a small child in this show is really kind of evil. You can come in if you want.
He's counting.
Stay out, come in, I don't care.
He's counting.
I'm counting it.
Some of you are familiar with Alice through plays. How many of you were in a play or you've seen a play? Yeah, that's my daughter. You can tell that she stole the show. Look at she got the flowers. Look at it. She looked good. She just like got the. So a lot of us maybe that's our experience. Or Halloween.
Goodness.
Right? We see the babies like this, or we see it. Why? No. So that may be your experience, but I guarantee you. Or commercial. Tenniel's Alice, the original drawings for this book, which are like this, are being sold. People are making a fortune off of it. They're not copyrighted as far as I know. We should get together and create a company, yeah. So that is, but those are the illustrations from the book. And of course you won't know Alice until you read the book. Now here's the thing. If you read it as a kid, you're not going to pick up on what I picked up on in here, and what you should be able to, especially as English professors, this concentration on language rules, and things like that we might have overlooked as children. The reason that Alice is timeless, see, there's how many children's books have been written? How many do you think?
5 million trillion.
I know, right? You're a librarian, you know. Why are we still reading this? Why did it influence our culture so much? Right? I'm about to show you. You're like, what? It didn't influence us that much. Well, I can't remember the year, I want to say 2009 maybe, there were 210 references in new books in new books, 210 references to Alice in Wonderland in some way. The movie Undine, Curiouser and Curiouser. The Matrix, you go down the rabbit hole. It's just constant and it's everywhere. Why did this book, not this one in particular, influence so much? It's still relevant and it's influencing our culture so much. There's something about it, right? And what I argue is that it's because he is so interested in how we are communicating effectively or not. This, of course, is the real Alice, who looks nothing like our image of Alice. So he actually wrote this for a little girl. I think many of you probably know that. And he's trying to explain things to her in ways that she would be interested in, stories she would be interested in. Or he's commiserating with her with the things that she went through, right? So there was an actual child that this was written for. Lewis Carroll is the Reverend Charles Dodgson. He was actually quite the photographer, and some of his work hangs in museums. He took a picture of Tennyson, who, if you haven't read Ulysses, you should do so. And Christina Rossetti, who wrote Goblin Market. If you haven't read that, you should read it, but read that one out loud. He was a preacher. This is a published sermon of his. He was an Oxford Don, which means he was a professor of mathematics. He would have considered himself a logician. And so he has a published book there. And Virginia Woolf said that if Oxford Dons had an essence, that would be like, he would be the illustration of that essence. I always thought that was a great thing. So what we know about him is that he was a professor, he was a logician, a minister, a photographer. We also know, or I know from my studies, he was a political theorist, he was an activist. During that time they were doing what they call vivisection, which is, right, the dissecting of animals while they're alive, and he fought against that. He actually told the Queen that she needed to go visit Ireland, that she had been derelict in not visiting Ireland. That's interestingly, because he was so introverted and so kind of withdrawn socially, that in writing he felt very empowered to make these arguments. He was very particular, very orderly. If it said on the post that the mail would be delivered at 3, if they didn't show up at 3, if they came 5 minutes early or 5 minutes late, he would write a letter of complaint. He had diagrams to show how to tie strings around the packages that he mailed. He was this particular. So I do know that he had a table like this. He never sat. He wrote this whole book like this by hand. Here are some of the words that are in the English language in the Oxford English Dictionary that he created. Do you know the word chortled? Mm-hmm. He created that word. Portmanteau. Mm-hmm. So obviously frabjous. Now some of these words you're like, I don't really say those words, but I think if you start looking for them, you're going to see them. You're going to realize they show up more than you think. So we have in the Jabberwock some very interesting, and hast thou slain the Jabberwock, come to my arms, my beamish boy. O frabjous day, callooh callay, he chortled in his joy. Now, most of us read this and we say, well, this is nonsense. But actual rhetorical theorists have read it and said, this man's a genius. He created words that fit exactly, we understand what's going on because they are the type of words, nouns. A noun would sound like this, it would work like this. So his created words fit within our system. There are approximately 150 quotations contributed to Dodgson in the Oxford English Dictionary. And then, of course, there are these words that were created just to describe language that is like him. Who's using these words? You're like, nobody uses those words. C.S. Lewis does. Rudyard Kipling does. You know the Jungle Book? He wrote the Jungle Book, right? And then we have The Lion, the Witch, and the Wardrobe, and The Lord of the Rings. Here, Carolese, he's given us a diorama. So there's no definite place. Wonderland is not set in England necessarily. The only references we have are to English works, or maybe that she had once been to an English train station. We don't know where Wonderland is geographically in our existing world. We don't know what time it is. We could say, oh, well, there's a reference to this product or this event, but you'd have to dig. So what we have is basically he has given us a world in a box that is easy enough for you to say, this is like my world, or I can understand this, I can relate to this. Which is why this book has shown up in every country in their own language, and their kids are reading it. Russia, Germany, Poland, France, they're reading this. My German student, when I said, have you ever read Alice in Wonderland? She was like this. Nobody else. I said, oh, you read it in English? She said, no, in German. It offers us the kinds of verbal confusion that are inherent in our communicative systems. Can you read that for me?
T.B. Strong's Lewis Carroll, he argued he was somewhat rigid and precise, carefully examining the terms used, relentless in pointing out the logical results of any position assumed by his opponent, and quick to devise a puzzling case when he wanted to bring objections against a rule of principle. But his skill lay in tracing consequences.
This is a man who was very serious and particular, and he argued very well, and he liked to show consequences. Hold it upside down, I know. It's okay. That's the consequence of not paying attention. And so when we say this is nonsense, no, this was not a man who could create nonsense. There was something in here he was trying to really tell us. Can you read this for us?
Alice's commentary on language through the looking glass seems disorderly because it is a combination of ordinary sloppy thinking of the reader and the sloppy traditions of his language.
That could be offensive, like, what? No, but we are, and he shows us some of this. We're going to take a look in a minute and see, like, what kind of examples is he showing us here. But what I wanted to point out right here is, although we need to read this. Read that for me. Yes.
No wise fish would go anywhere without a porpoise. Wouldn't it really? Said Alice in a tone of great surprise. Of course not, said the mock turtle. Why, if a fish came to me and told me he was going on a journey, I should say, with what purpose?
There needs to be a purpose, right? And since we're writing this for kids, we make it cute and fun. But what we see here is an example of what rhetorical theorists have said. Now, what I found is that they don't really say Lewis Carroll, or Charles does, is a rhetorical theorist in his own right. That's what I said. I never saw any of them say it. What I did see them do is use his examples. Burke, Saussure, I don't know if I ever said his name right. Saussure. Richards, Ogden, Deleuze, all of them have used examples from Alice in Wonderland through the Looking Glass, Jabberwocky, to illustrate their points or their claims without giving credit to the fact that Carroll might have been doing exactly what they were doing, without explaining, because he was dealing with his audience were children. The children don't care. The theoretical foundation for this illustrate, right? They never gave him credit in that manner. Well, Deleuze does. Deleuze does more so than the rest of them. In fact, he wrote a book that was basically about the examples that Carroll provides. So he's doing exactly what later, a half a century later, when these theorists come out with their big, discoveries, they're saying, we need to focus on the forms of verbal confusion that are more subtle and more frequent. He already did that in the 1860s. Okay, in fact, he did it so well. What do we have here? actually used in court cases, right? His words, or the way that he created words, that all words have meaning, whether we know whether the word that we know it was invented or not. Although in reality, all words were invented. Does that make sense? Did you ever think about it? Where did it come from? Who invented it? We don't know. But in the Oxford English Dictionary, you can look up like etymology, and if we do know, it says it in there. It's really cool. Like, just sit down and read that for a while. It's pretty cool. I used to read the dictionary. All the cool chicks do it. Let's take a look at some examples and talk about them. Would you read this for us? Would you? Yes.
Here's the problem with English words. There's glory for you, Humpty Dumpty. I don't know what you mean by glory, Alice said. Humpty Dumpty smiled contemptuously. Of course you don't, till I tell you. I mean, there's a nice knockdown argument for you. But glory doesn't mean a nice knockdown argument, Alice objected. When/use a word, Humpty Dumpty said in a rather scornful tone, means just what I choose it to mean, neither more nor less. The question is, says Alice, whether you can make words mean so many different things.
Now think about this. We probably thought, okay, that's kind of funny and weird and nonsensical.
Semantics.
Yeah. Can you make words mean so many different things? Guess what we have done? That's exactly what we have done with English.
Be careful about that.
Yes! And in our language, and you know, I can't speak on everybody's language, but I do know that English is probably the worst, and that foreign speakers have a problem with it because, and my soccer boys tell me this all the time when they come from other countries. I thought that word meant this. Well, it does mean that. But you didn't use it like that. Yes, well, it means this too. And the other thing is, so we do this, we make words mean so many different things. The other thing, though, is what has Humpty Dumpty done? He's said, well, this is what I want it to mean, so that's what it means. And it doesn't matter. Now, when does this happen? Has somebody ever used a word to you and you're like, that's not what it means. Yes, it is. Because in their mind, it's what it means. That's what it means, so it's okay. These things actually happen. This is how we end up with words like bling bling in the dictionary. What's a cool word that you're using these days? Yeah, what's some slang?
Fleek.
Fleek. Oh my gosh, yes. Fleek. What is fleek?
I have no idea. I don't know. It's
Where did it come from?
I really don't know. It's like you just wake up one day and these words are there.
And you use them because somebody else did mine. So when I went through chemotherapy, I had to draw my eyebrows on, right? Get the little stencil and yeah. Actually, I kept that thing. That was probably the best thing somebody gave me. So I just draw eyebrows on everything now. No, and I walked in and I had used the one that was too big, but you know, like no time, can't do it over. So I'm walking around with these really huge eyebrows because I used the wrong one, the wrong stencil. And my friend goes, "Oh, your eyebrows are on fleek." And I'm like, "What? Is that bad? Is that good?" So, all right. Here's another thing. So Alice is in court. In the book, Alice is in the courtroom. There's a court case going on, and this is the evidence that is being given. Susan, can you read this?
Sure. They told me you had been to her and mentioned me to him. She gave me a good character, but said I could not swim. He sent them word I had not gone. We know it to be true. If she should push the matter on, what would become of you?
So, you know, somebody in the court's like, that proves it. And Alice's like, I'll give you 6 pence if you can tell me what that means. It proves nothing, right? There's not, I mean, these aren't her exact words, but I think she says there's not an atom of meaning in it, right? So there's this whole, and it's supposed to be evidence, but it can't work as evidence because it's vagueness. Has your English teacher told you something was vague? You? Everybody? Okay, so here's and you're like, what does that mean? I'm being perfectly clear, right? What is the real problem here? Do you know? Can you identify it?
Lack of
context, lack of specificity.
Pronoun
So kind of-
reference.
I was going to say
Pronouns.
pronoun.
Noun antecedent, right? There's no,
Yeah.
we don't know who they are, we don't know, I think we could tell me, because it should be the speaker. But her, him, they, we don't know who they are because there's no noun antecedent. Like the noun wasn't clarified at some point in the sentence before a pronoun was used. The thing is, I do this with my students when we bring up vagueness to prove a point, or ambiguity it might be called. There is too much room there. It could be any food. And if you say the word food, then we could all be thinking of something different, right? I've been wanting spaghetti for some reason, like I'm craving it. So you say food, I'm gonna think spaghetti, that's not oranges. And now we're thinking of two different things. Could that matter? Well, yeah, for an argument it would. Alice almost drowns in her tears in the book, like literally, right? She's swimming around in her tears. Why? Well, it's because, stop crying or you're going to drown in your tears. Did any of you ever hear that? No? My mother used to tell me, stop crying, it makes your face look ugly. That one? We had the mean parents. Okay.
Oh, you haven't heard me until you sit here, stop crying or I'll give you something to cry.
Yeah. We say things like this all the time. Stop making that face, your face is going to stick that way. Well, that's a little different. It's the same kind of speech, but it's a little different in terms of this is more like a metaphor that is used. I'm drowning in my own tears. I bet that's got to be a country song. Country song? Yeah. So it's a little metaphorical, but Carroll points out these things by having the characters, while it may seem like nonsense that Alice is swimming around in her tears, he's trying to show this would be the consequence. Remember earlier I said, and a theorist said he was very concerned about consequences. In every argument that he made, he would really clarify the consequences of what would happen if this or if that. And we do have a dream scenario here mainly so that he could logically explain how there is this world that exists that doesn't exist, right? So that is the logical part of his mind saying, I want to tell this story, but I can't tell it in England because that's not possible. It's not feasible. Another thing is, he has addressed things like we say written down. You might see it written down somewhere, but the reality is we don't look down for signs. So he says, he has Alice saying or thinking things like she might see it written up somewhere because he's correcting that. That actually makes more sense. We look, when we're reading this, we say, oh, that's nonsense. No, that actually makes way more sense, right? Although we do write things down, or they did. You don't.
But we also write things up now.
That's right.
Here, you'll get written up if I catch you doing that.
Yeah, and then you're not even writing things down, are you? How often are you using your hands to write things? How often? Are you just typing it? Okay, let's be real here for a second. Teachable moment. Studies have shown that if you actually write things out, you have a higher percentage of a chance of recalling it, of remembering it.
Yes.
Of it being, yes, it's like studies. Lots of studies. So.
That's why you use your iPad with your pen. That
Oh my gosh. No, I want paper and pencil. So here we have some instances where this logician who's writing this book has a problem with the things that we say. And we say these things. So Debbie, what do we have?
Nothing, said Alice. Nothing whatever, persisted the king.
So his problem with this is, why would you say nothing whatever? Can you expand on nothing? Can you expand on zero? So this is why he brings this up. He doesn't like this. Why do we do it? And what is the king really asking? The king is really asking if Alice is telling the truth. And he doesn't say, are you telling me the truth? Right? And then we have, I am 7.5 exactly. At what age do you stop saying and a half? I know after 40 you quit. Okay, I'm 29 and a half, right? But Alice is a child. She wants to be older. So she adds in the half and then says exactly. Now, why does the queen tell her that you don't have to say exactly?
Because 7.5 is exact.
Right. So, have you had a teacher tell you you have there's unnecessary stuff here? Yes. Fluff, we call it, it's a pretty name for it.
Fluff.
It makes you feel better when we tell you how to delete it. Let's call it lint, right? Oh, okay, we're deleting that.
I like that
Okay.
better.
We have syntax covered and discussed. Can you read this for me?
If we want to know the answer to do cats eat bats, we cannot do bats eats cats.
Right. So this is one of the characters is like, do cats eat bats? Oh, this is actually Alice. Do cats eat bats? Do bats eat cats? She thinks she's saying the same thing, but she switched the words around. And this is one of the things that we probably don't have to teach you at this point because you've learned it. Like almost automatically. Very few people have to be taught about syntax because you just learn it through, this is your language. You've spoken it all your life, you've read it all your life, and you pick up on this. Yeah, I know that's two different things, right? So we say, oh, well, you can't move words around in a sentence and have it mean the same thing. But then he gives us this. You want to read it?
For the Duchess, an invitation from the Queen to play croquet. From the Queen, an invitation for the Duchess to play croquet.
Right? The footmen are saying this to each other. Does it mean the same thing? Yeah. Yeah, we can move some things around. We can't move other things around. He's not really crazy about this. I mean, he understands the rule, but he's just saying, wouldn't it be more logical if we just said, no, you can't, or yes, you can. Like, you know, you can't here, you can't there. And so he's bringing up these little intricate rules, like we know these rules, right? And we've been okay with them, but he's really investigating this. I think one is that he is approaching the English language as a mathematician would. It's a set of symbols, graphemes. So how many of you are mathematicians? You're better at math.
That's why we're
Yeah,
here.
you? Yeah. Okay. So here's the thing. You say, oh, I'm better at math. Why? You like that there's symbols. You like that there's patterns that you can discover. You may not have thought of it that way, but that's what we know. The English language is a set of symbols that have patterns. It's the same idea. Your symbols have quantities, our symbols have sounds. That's the difference. So if you start looking at your papers, like there's a patterns there, you're going to have an easier time. These are symbols, and I'm going to create a pattern with it, right? You're going to have an easier time with it. So I think there's that he had that outlook. What was the...
I was just thinking, other languages have declensions, and, they don't have the same kind of flexibility that English does with the prepositional phrases and whatever. So I'm wondering if the study of Latin or any other language may have informed him.
Well, that's what happened, right? The reason that we can do this is because we Frenchified our language with William the Conqueror, 1066. William's like, yo, I want to go take over England and make them speak some French. And he did, and then French became the
Language
lingua
of-
franca, right? English is now the lingua franca, right? Because, There's also that when he died and his libraries were sold or auctioned off, the number of books on Aristotle, Plato, Cicero, that man had an unbelievable, we would have all loved to have that library.
Yes.
French.
And so there's multiple words for love. We've got one word and we apply it to everything.
Yeah, those French boys are much more into the love, too.
Even tennis,
Yeah.
that has a French origin.
Yeah.
So here's the thing, in this book, what happens with the mouse when the mouse tells his tale? He talks about William the Conqueror.
Oh.
Yeah, and the mouse speaks French. And time has a gender. Why does time have a gender? Actually, English is derived from West Saxon, which is a Germanic language.
English has gender. Ships are female.
Well,
It's a carryover from the old gendered
you
ending.
think so?
I thought
Yeah.
that's only cars.
But there's all kinds of things that we treat as gendered even.
Yeah,
though
but
we
in
don't
English,
have
not
to.
everything has gender. Only the things men consider their toys.
Whoa.
All right.
Ouch. Ouch.
Okay. Now we have Humpty Dumpty again, and Humpty Dumpty is a very interesting character. How many are familiar with a synopsic view of language? We might just, off the cuff say a very lazy treatment of language. Humpty Dumpty is this representation of that person who is very lazy with their language. So they just, whatever they want words to mean. So Alice says something and Humpty Dumpty says, impenetrability. Did I say it right? Hey, I might have.
Yeah.
Okay, so read this.
I meant by impenetrability that we've had enough of that subject, and it would be just as well if you'd mention what you mean to do next, as I suppose you don't mean to stop here all the rest of your life. That's a great deal to make one word mean.
Okay, but how many of you, maybe we've done it ourselves. You just say one word, you mean a lot more, but you just say the one word and you want to move on. It's because you just want to move on, right? I think when we're going to argue politics with my brother, since he never makes sense, I'm just going to start saying impenetrability. Yeah. But Humpty Dumpty is this example, and he gets a good amount of treatment from theorists. Another interesting character is the caterpillar. Remember the thing from the plays, my daughter played the caterpillar? The caterpillar sitting up on the mushroom, smoking his hookah, right? He's the only character really that has that, and he, who are you? Right? And everything Alice says, the caterpillar gets offended. Who do you think that is? I actually think that's somebody he knows. It's that philosopher, right, who they know better than you, and they are more sophisticated, and, everything you say, they get offended. The caterpillar is very interesting in the fact that when he gets offended, it's things Alice probably shouldn't have said. So Alice says, I just hate being 3 inches tall. It's a dreadful height to be. And the caterpillar rears up, and how tall is the caterpillar? 3 inches tall. One of the things, of course, is that you should think before you say. Yeah. Do we think before we say? We have a habit of just saying. The interesting aspect that might be missed, certainly when we're younger, but not when we're older, is that all of the characters are trying to subjugate or suppress Alice. Right? They want to tell her what to do, what she can and cannot do. And they're rude to her, and they don't want her to say rude things, but they're rude to her. Mm-hmm. Yeah. Do you know the part where she comes to sit at the table, they yell, no room, no room. And then they say things to her like, your hair wants cutting. Right? And Alice is like, that is rude. The interesting part of the tea party is things like, would you like some more tea? Well, I haven't had any yet. But we say things like that. We quantify, qualify things we shouldn't. We try to use language to exert power. And there's a lot of evidence of that here. And a lot of the theorists who talk about it, I think Butler, is it Butler who says, Judith Butler says, we make things happen with our speech, or, no, wait, yeah, I think that's part of it, but that language is power, right? So she's been involved, or her theory has been involved in some court cases where, can you say this word, or can you say that word? Is this word a hate word, or not? Those kind of things. So, the power of speech, very clearly shown when the flowers tell Alice, you are not to speak until spoken to. You should not speak until you're spoken to. Have you ever heard this?
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
You did?
Yeah.
When you were a kid?
I did. Mm-hmm. That was part of the
You too,
rules. Yeah.
My great-grandmother said children were to be silent.
Yeah.
Tell my toddler that.
her drinks.
And eat last.
Paul says women are to be silent.
Well, he says other things.
Well, Alice wants to know
Take it
if
out of
that's a
context a
rule
lot.
that everybody follows, who speaks first?
Not when he's talking about
Right.
tradition.
So it's not a rule everybody follows. So some of our language rules, and this is another point that he's bringing up, only apply to certain people. And who are those people? Who has the power to speak first, right? The fact that a word can mean several different things is where a lot of the nonsense comes from, right? The mouse tries to dry wet Alice by telling her a dry tale. A boring tale. She's like, this is the driest tale I know, right? When he says the word tale, meaning story, Alice envisions his tale, which is where we get that great poem that is shaped, and what is that called? It escaped my mind because I'm not a literature person. So I'm rhetoric, obviously. The shaped poems, they contribute this to him, right? The poem was shaped like the mouse's tail.
Herbert, is it Herbert one of the poets? Winged poetry, remember?
I've just always heard.
Oh, we're all gonna go look it up, right? All of
I've
us.
just always heard it called shaped poetry.
Yeah.
so-
Yeah, well, this is English. There's 5 words for that, sir.
No doubt.
So now we have time, right? The queen is mad at the Mad Hatter, and we want to know why. And so the Mad Hatter says, well, he was singing at a concert, and of course he sings the wrong words, twinkle, twinkle, little bat. Right? And so Alice asks him something about beating time, and he says, well, he won't stand a beating. So beating time, the word beating meaning several different things. And then this is where we see the genderization of the language, which we really don't see in English unless, okay. So that situation that you mentioned earlier, which comes from the West Saxon, the Germanic part. Our language derives from West Saxon. Did you know this? So the Germans, some German tribes were like, you know what, we need some more land, we're going to go over here to this island and kick some butt and take some land. Right, so the Angles, the Saxons, the Frisians, here's another one. So they go over there and they get a bunch of land, and then they're like, we're the boss now, so we're going to start writing. So King Alfred's like, let's write stuff down in our own language. And then of course somebody else comes and kicks their butts, and more language comes in. But it is from the Saxons, Alfred, who writes things down, that we get English. Angles, English, English. Even though it was Saxon. I don't know, don't ask me.
Well, you study German, and I mean, the English cognates are huge. I mean, just tons of cognates between English and German.
Well, they say that our language is only 15% of the West Saxon, the original English. Which means that 85% of our language, French, Spanish,
Celtic.
probably later German.
Native American.
Yeah, Native American. Indian, pajamas is an
Chattanooga.
Indian word.
Sure.
But you do see,
Yeah, one of my English boys was
Copy
talking to me, he was,
influence in this area.
explaining something, and he said the word reckon. And I'm like, oh, you've been in the South too long. He's, what are you talking about? What, because we actually got it from them. They didn't get it from us. Here's an interesting thing that we might not have thought about, which is word association. So in Through the Looking Glass, Alice is in a boat with the sheep, and the sheep cries feather when he sees Alice, and Alice doesn't know what that is. She thinks it's just like an exclamation. Exclamation. Schoolhouse Rock. Good stuff. You gotta watch this. Okay, so, but when Alice asks, he tells her what? That it's because she's a goose. What does that mean, she's a goose?
Silly.
Yeah. So why? So this is what he's pointing out. We called her a goose because she's silly. Why? So it should make just as much sense that the sheep, that the sheep says feather. That should make just as much sense.
I mean, doesn't a feather tickle you, which would be silly?
All right. So basically, what we see in these books that were supposed to be nonsense is that a very serious man has created stories for children that were meant to serve as examples of what we actually go through. His audience are children, so he's got to make it appealing to them, right? He can't explain it the way Kenneth Burke did, which I'm so glad. But that's his audience, children, and what he's doing is he's talking about these things. What happens when signification goes wrong? What happens when we use the incorrect words? Or we use the right words, but our rules don't make sense. Or our rules only apply to some people, they don't apply to others. Or we need a new rule, whatever it is. I found that 92% of Tennessee standards for the 8th grade language arts can be met by using Alice in Wonderland. And part of my original thesis was to add these lesson plans at the end to show how that could happen. So that's how entrenched, you know, or how comprehensive, sorry, not the right word, how comprehensive this book is. It's very sensible and very useful and could be used. We could reclaim that as a text for, certainly for 8th grade language arts in the state of Tennessee, because that's what I looked at.
But it's true.
Well, actually, let's think about this. So we have a president now who likes the word huge, he likes the word very.
Yes,
He likes the word very a lot.
yes.
It's
Very much. He likes very, very, very much.
I know, and so I had a student, she used the word very 20 times on the first page of her paper.
Whoa.
And so I said to her, you can't do this sounds juvenile. Well, why would you say that? Our president uses this word. So, but the reason I brought this up, so the other day he mentioned the word, he used the word bigly. Now, obviously, I'm assuming he didn't mean to say that word. I'm assuming that this was some kind of slip of the tongue or something. But what happened is people jumped on it, and now as a way to obviously to make fun of him, they're using this word bigly. And that is a ludic expression. So the word, what does it mean? I guarantee you it's going to show up in the dictionary.
It will.
Yeah.
Okay, can I just make it, so those are neologisms, right? Like they're words that are created, like new words.
Yeah.
So back to this whole idea of power, I mean, like are neologisms more acceptable when they're created by people who have authority and power?
Yes.
I don't know. Who decides?
It sounds stupid now.
You know, is it like
Judith
some
Butler invented words,
famous
right?
person that
It depends.
started using fleek and y'all, like Kanye was on
They're on the
fleek?
other side of the country, so by the time it gets here, I'm really not sure where it originated from.
Yeah.
It's like, I mean, it's there.
Okay, let me ask you this. Are there any words your grandma used with you that you can think of that you don't really hear your friends using?
Probably a lot of.
That's something interesting for all of us to think.
Probably the word hottie.
Oh, a hottie?
So you're out with grandma and she's like, he's a hottie. Okay, grandma.
What's your grandma?
Like
It's snobby.
H-A-U-G-H.
Haughty.
Or?
Yeah,
Haughty.
haughty.
Haughty. Oh, yes.
Not
Okay,
only
so-
anymore.
Yeah.
Haughty, lording it over somebody. Yeah.
Yes.
We used to call it snooty.
Yes, that was good. Oh, I need you to sign up for all my classes.
Yeah, that was good.
Stephen Pinker pointed out that the word dis,
To
which was
dis-
invented by
Disrespect.
people who were not educated,
Yeah.
for the most part, they were just regular street people, they invented the word dis. But he says he predicts that will eventually make its way in the dictionary, and his reasoning is that the word dis
I bet it is.
has no English equivalent.
That's true.
Because, in other words, it serves a place that we don't have a word that means dis.
And it's
Disrespect.
That's it. It's
To show
it's
disrespect.
It's one
Disrespect.
word.
It's a verb, dis.
It's one
Yeah.
word, though, that has multiple words to describe it.
Yeah.
And so by saying you're dissing somebody, it says that, well, I totally ignored this person and was disrespectful to them. You can say, I totally
Yeah. So his point is that it serves, that to do it, you have to use lots of words to express the meaning.
Exactly.
He also points out that dissing is spelled with 2 S's.
It is.
But this is spelled with 1. Dis is spelled with 2 S's.
Root
He
word.
points out that the people that invented the word
Prefix.
followed the grammatical patterns, which is exactly what he's doing
Yes,
to say
yes.
upward.
Henry Gates Was he the one that was erroneously arrested? trying to
Yes,
get into his own
he
house?
is.
Yeah. So he talks about, I think, kind of along those lines of what would be called signifying. The best example in cinematography that comes right to mind are the monkeys in the Jungle Book. When they talk, they're like man, and they're, what would you call that? Very urban way of speaking. And that this urban way of speaking was their way of controlling their language and their ability to communicate, meeting with each other, that upper class white people would not be a part of. Do you know what I'm talking about? Yes.
Yeah.
So you would say, who has the power? Who said, is it like the rich people? Is it who has the power with these words? Well, we think of that would be our natural intuition. And this is Gates saying, no, the words were used to take this power for them.
I keep thinking about
Signifying.
the movie Airplane back in the day. And do you remember that the guys
It's a hat,
talking?
it's a pterodactyl. Yeah.
But the guys talking, the African-American guys talking on the plane, and they were talking in a language that they had to have subtitles for.
Yeah.
And then the stewardess comes up, actually it was the lady from Father Knows Best or something comes up and can talk with them in that language too. So it was like something, it reminds me of that, is having the power together, and didn't realize that this woman, who was probably from suburbia, could speak the same language.
Yes, language is subversion.
Yeah.
Yes, language as subversion being a means of taking power, yeah. That maybe, did you ever invent words to use so your parents wouldn't know what you were talking about? Okay, so this is what I want you to think about. On your own, just for your own purposes. What words do you use to try to claim power for yourself? What words have been used against you or at you where someone was trying to claim power over you? Right. What words did your grandma use? That was a fabulous one. That your grandmother or an older generation used that y'all don't really use anymore? Just think about that. And please do read Alice in Wonderland. It's 80 pages. It's not that long. And really, I mean...
And it has pictures.
It does have pictures. Look, this is what mine looks like.
Oh, Lord.
So, just like break it all apart.
I'm really going to revoke.
You should annotate everything.
That better not be my copy.
You should annotate everything you read, everything, even your textbooks, because when you see something and you go, that reminds me of the monkeys from the Jungle Book, guess what happens in your head? You retain this more, you think about that association, like why did it remind you, what's really going on here? Before you know it, you're writing a paper without, beating your head against a wall.
But
Just
not
like-
in a library copy.
Not the library. Use Post-it notes. Post-it notes or a notebook. Did you have any questions, comments? Did you want to sing any Walt Disney songs before? Today's presentation wasn't as stuffy because I was told that there would be students here and I didn't want to. Originally it was all about the theorist, and y'all probably actually appreciate that I didn't do that either. I didn't even really want to do all that. I was doing it.
You did
So,
very well.
Thank you, Madonna.